Hello, it's Father Rich. I'm here in the Rectory at Our Lady of Peace filming our next masterpiece, number 55. I'm drinking out of my special Christmas mug, which says on it, "I triple dog dare you." Made me think of this masterpiece. It's not the same one, but A Christmas Story. That's a beloved Christmas special that to the point where it's run for, I think, 24 straight hours during Christmas on TNT. But interestingly enough, it didn't do well in the box office, and it was only through being shown on TV where it really picked up to become a holiday classic. And the next masterpiece is the same thing. It's a Wonderful Life. It's the movie from 1946, directed by Frank Capra. It actually didn't do well in the box office, but but over time, as it was shown during the holidays on television for years, it became beloved and kind of almost renewed in its critical acclaim. At the time, it was kind of accused of being kind of Pollyannish, but people kind of grew to appreciate it more, taking it out of maybe that category of what we would call now Hallmark movies, right? But having a little more depth to it. So it's the story about George Bailey, who's played by Jimmy Stewart, famous actor. And he is growing up in a place called Bedford Falls, a little town that he wants to get out of. He wants to see the world. He wants to do important things. But over time, it turns out he takes over his father's business, was a savings bank and loan place. And so it's kind of pitted against the nemesis of the movie, which is Mr. Potter, who is very wealthy and is taking over the town, and is very selfish and greedy and wants to keep control of everybody and keep them indebted to him. Whereas George's father and then him, their business is trying to help people to become independent, to be able to build their own homes, so they're more merciful and they work with people in their situations. So the movie culminates in this moment on Christmas Eve when George Bailey's kind of bumbling uncle partner loses $8,000. The police are, coming after George. His family's kind of falling apart. So everything's, kind of coming down on him. And in this moment, he has a moment of temptation to despair. He's on the snowy Christmas Eve night. He's on the bridge in town, and he's thinking about jumping off. And in that moment, intercession happens through prayer. This is a great witness to prayer, in which the angel, his guardian angel Clarence, comes to him, and in the midst of talking to George, George says not that he wants to end his life, he wishes he never existed. So Clarence decides to show George what life in Bedford Falls would have looked like if he had not existed. And obviously it shows the great impact that he had, how much better things were, and George ends up being renewed and appreciating his life, ends up going back to his family. All the people that George and his family, his father, had helped over the years come to give George money to help him overcome this moment of loss, and it all ends up, working out. And so kind of good triumphs over that evil. But George is called to sacrifice. He couldn't go to college. He couldn't do the traveling he wanted to do. So a great, really Catholic Christian themes of sacrificial love, and really finding fulfillment, and the greatest fulfillment that we can know when we live for others and not for ourselves. And so this actually reveals a theme throughout Frank Capra's movies about which he would say he sought to kind of reinforce the Beatitudes, the greatest law of loving others as God loves us, and this whole idea of living selflessly for other. Frank Capra was a Catholic, actually. He had kind of gotten away from his faith in his earlier adult life, was kind of a Christmas Easter Catholic, as he would call it, but he had a midlife kind of reversion experience with his Catholicism. His wife was actively Catholic, so that kind of called him back to a greater focus in that. But you couldn't help but see those themes throughout his movies. His early movies were the most successful. He actually was born in the late 1800s in Italy, came to Los Angeles, I think, at the age of 6 in 1903. Actually didn't want to be an immigrant like the others that got into manual labor. He wanted to do better than that, so to speak. So he went to college, but then got a job in his early adult life in one of the movie companies and showed a real knack for it. And so by the 1930s, he was directing his own films. He had a kind of a run in the 30s of films that were very well acclaimed. It Happened One Night, 1934, which won the Academy Award in all 5 major categories. American Madness, 32. Mr. Deeds Goes to Town, 36. Mr. Smith Goes to Washington, 39. And then Meet John Doe, 1941. Those last 3 being kind of considered a bit of a trilogy, kind of Capra making a statement against kind of the greedy, over materialistic, world, certainly in the United States, and kind of, so that was part of that trilogy. So very successful. Then he went off to World War II. He was one of 5 movie directors asked to go help film the war and help build support for it, help people understand what was going on and why we should support the war. So he did this documentary called Why We Fight that was over 3 years, 42 to 45, very well received. And then 46 did It's a Wonderful Life. And that really was the culmination. After that, he kind of got out of movies, didn't succeed that much, got more into TV movies. And really, it wasn't until after he died that really was appreciated for It's a Wonderful Life. And again, eventually being seen as one of the great movie directors of the 20th century. But one thing about his Catholic faith, he wrote there's a quote about him in this chapter, which I want to read because he had a great Eucharistic devotion, and it's a great witness to our Catholic belief in the Eucharist. This is what he said: "On those holy days, I sneaked into the Catholic Church to kneel, to smell the incense, hear the angels sing, and be lifted out of my shoes by the passion and resurrection of Christ. It may happen to you only once in 100 masses, but it will still happen. You walk back from communion with the host on your tongue, a nobody. You kneel, drop your head in your hands. Slowly, the wonder of it fills you with joy. The dissolving host in your mouth is the living Christ." So really a beautiful statement, Eucharistic statement and belief by Frank Capra, the director of It's a Wonderful Life. And then the chapter concludes thus: "My films," Capra said, "must let every man, woman, and child know that God loves them, that I love them, and that peace and salvation will become a reality only when they all learn to love each other." So that's It's a Wonderful Life, and I think that movie did that in a great way. The next, we already did, I will move up on a little higher. We had some filming issues with this video, so we jumped ahead. So the actual next one that we're going to reveal is after that, which is The Chronicles of Narnia by C.S. Lewis. So I hope you'll join me for that. Thank you for being here. Have a great day, and God bless.